Don't let it end this way, Captain.
But unfortunately, Paradox has said, nah, we're good. So if you haven't heard, Paradox Interactive has officially announced that they have stopped development on Star Trek Infinite. There will be no further updates to the game, and by this I take that any current bugs or issues with the game are going to remain unresolved. And of course, there's going to be no more content moving forward, except maybe in the modding community. So how do we get here? I remember just over a year ago, I heard Paradox was developing a Star Trek Grand Strategy game, and I was excited. I'm a die-hard Hoi 4 player, so I know Paradox can be great and how much fun their Grand Strategy games can be, and I'm a lifelong Trekkie. So between the two, I was ready for it. I was all about it. I was on my wish list on Steam, and it was like $30, which you can't really beat. You know, when we started seeing the art coming out, and it was good, and it looked great. The music sounded good. The visuals were good. Like, you could really see Stellaris in it, but that was okay. Stellaris is a good game. So it was like, all right, you know, they're gonna really have a good Stellaris Trek mesh, and it'll be great. So then October hit, the game was released, and I think we all looked around and went, meh. You know, there was a number of very basic bugs that we'll get into a little bit later, but it looked like at that point there was some hope too. Nimble Giant, the dev studio, they came out with a very aggressive, like, weekly update to it, where they were stomping those bugs out, and they were going to get it all going good, and we were going to be good. And a month deep into it, I put out a video and was like, yeah, you know, it has its issues, but it's good. It's Star Trek, and, you know, it's fine. It'll be great. And you know what? There'll be DLC. Paradox is gonna come in with their DLC, and they're gonna give us a bigger universe and give us more story. It'll be great. And then the Christmas holiday hit 3 months later, and it all just stopped. And in January, we got a couple of things coming out from the dev team that they were talking to Paramount about more content, and then some news articles came out that there was cutbacks at Nimble Giant, and now in the last week of March, we got the confirmation that we had reached the end. So how did we get here? Well, I think the first thing we got to talk about is bugs. Yeah, unfortunately, the game launched in somewhat poor condition. The story didn't always work, which is suboptimal in a story-based game that you're playing to figure out the rest of the story. You had annoying and false audio prompts, and I think probably the biggest bug of it all is you couldn't play the game at high resolutions when it first launched. They had some error that would happen if you were trying to play in 1440 or 4K. And, I mean, come on, guys. You're marketing a game to people who like stuff like this.
Well, it just occurred to me that I could set up a frequency harmonic between the deflector and the shield grid using the warp field generator as a power flow anti-attenuator, and that, of course, naturally created an amplification of the inherent energy output.
I see that.
We have the good computers. We have the good tech. We play at high refresh rates and high resolutions. So you need to build a game that can take advantage of that because your audience has that tech. And like the old saying goes, you know, you never get a second chance at a first impression. Well, you also don't ever get a second chance at good Steam reviews unless you're willing to sink a ton of time and effort into it, like something like No Man's Sky did, and you just sink years into your game to get people to finally come around to it, or Cyberpunk. But unfortunately, I don't think this game had that kind of budget, so when it came out and everybody went meh, and especially meh because of easily fixable bugs, that was somewhat concerning. And I think that concerned the community and concerned people who were thinking about buying the game. Why did that happen? I mean, I think that had to be a question that should have been asked, is why did Nimble Giant not play test their game? This isn't an online game. This wasn't, the servers got got smashed by 800,000 people trying to play it. It's a single player game. You can run through the story and all its different permutations. You pay a guy to sit down and play the thing for a while. And then you knock out those bugs. You have a guy try and play it in 1440p. And you knock those bugs out. I don't understand what in the dev cycle stopped them from making this what it needed to be. It was just a massive unforced error that did a ton of damage to the game's brand. And the fact that they managed to exterminate most of these bugs in like the first 2 months after launch shows that they weren't that difficult of solutions. So why Nimble Giant Paradox put out a game like that knowing it was buggy is a little confusing to me. Number 2, the Borg. Again. For Christ's sake, people. I like the Borg. The Borg are a great antagonist. They have been a great antagonist for years, for decades. They've been a great antagonist. You know, the TNG episodes that they're in are some of the best TNG episodes. The TNG movie, First Contact, is the best one. And Picard used them as well. And for some reason, they decided to put them in Enterprise for an episode or two. We've done the Borg. You know, you're coming out with a new Star Trek game. Why don't you come out with a new antagonist or reuse an antagonist? How about these guys?
I have attempted to trace the message Remick was sending. I believe it was aimed at an unexplored sector of our galaxy.
Any idea what the message was, Data?
I believe it was a beacon.
A beacon?
Yes, sir. A homing beacon. Sent from Earth.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's some secret conspiracy at Paramount that says you never get to see those guys again. But there's this whole like species of people that said they were going to invade the Federation and they were on their way and they'd sent the signal off to them. All of this was already set up, you know, big softball sized thing to hit out of the park. Oh, by the way, your game, Endgame, is predicated on a massive invasion by some thing. I don't know. That kind of just seems like an obvious connection to me. So why not use it? Instead, you go back to the Borg, and we've all seen the Borg. Give us Trekkies something to pull for. Yeah, give us some mystery that we can go and find, and give us a reason to play through the game farther and farther. And you do that. You give this community just that much, and you'll have these guys snorting Adderall and mainlining this game until they find every little nook and cranny of all the stuff that you hid in it. It just, for a story-based game, for a game that, yes, you can make your own story, but the stories within this framework, we went pretty vanilla on the story, and I don't think that was the best way to go about it. Number 3, unfinished business. In the end, the game just felt unfinished, and not just at a technical level. In a universe with so much lore and canon and stories, you release a game with very little lore, canon, or stories in it, and and the attempts to use some of the canon just weren't right. Like, you had Data dying of old age, you had important figures that can become captains or spies or something like that, but then they don't do anything. Like you can get Seleia as a spy in the Romulan Empire, but she's just a spy. It doesn't change the story. It doesn't add any. She's not special in any way. It's just a special picture. So it just seemed like it was very thin on content. So my assumption was, because it was a Paradox title, was that there was DLC or more things in the pipeline. You know, I mean, just go play the original Stellaris and then mortgage your house, get all the expansions they did for Stellaris, and play it. And it's a completely different game. It is so much deeper, so much bigger than the original was. And I just kind of assumed they had some of these teed up, like, they bring it out and 3-4 months later it'd be like, hey, get the Dominion expansion pack. Or, even small things like, hey, we'll bring out skins for, your different factions. So, as the Federation, you can play as, the alternate universe Terran Empire ships just for fun, spend $2.99 on our game and get a skin. I know everybody loves microtransactions, but come on, you can do it. Release a race or two, update the mission trees. There was plenty of things for them, plenty of places for them to go to start fleshing this game out and to signal to the community that more would be on the way. And I just kind of assumed that all this was already in the works. Like, you have this massive universe and you have all this canon and all this stuff that you can use. I'm just shocked that they didn't have anything just sitting in the tank or in the pipe waiting to come out. Like, all right, here's the game. Oh, there's interest in the game. Great. Here's more stuff. And it just wasn't there. And, to give the devil their due as well, I know Paramount is very, very protective of Star Trek IP. And, they had the final sign off on anything. And so maybe they were the roadblock to all this. But with how Star Trek Online has gone, how far they've gone in canon and bringing characters back and doing different things, I have a hard time believing that the stumbling block was for Nimble Giant that Paramount wouldn't sign off on what they wanted to do. So in my mind, I'll lay this one until proven otherwise anyway at Nimble Giant's and Paradox's feet. I think they just simply lacked the vision or weren't willing to commit the resources to realize a game that cries out for in-depth story development and needs to pander at least just a bit to the fan base. So all in all, the story was meh, and the tech side of it, the software was meh, and so everybody went meh. So to wrap it all up, that's what happened, in my opinion. Nimble Giant lacked the vision to build a game that would captivate the audience they were after, or they lacked the resources to do it. And then it was rushed through, and I think they were just hoping that it would fly on, Star Trek fans. There's Star Trek fans that'll buy games. I'm sure there were plenty that did, like me. And when it came out and it was meh, you can't do that to many fan bases anymore and expect your game to succeed, because Steam reviews exist and YouTube exists and everybody kind of went meh. If you're given access to historic IP like Star Trek and you put out meh, it's just not going to work. And now it just seems like Paradox has no interest in trying to make it anything more than the meh it already is. So I guess we'll just stay here. Good night, my sweet meh Prince of Star Trek. May you rest in peace, and I hope in the future the modding community can do something to save what had the potential to be such an amazing game.